Okay, guys, welcome to here we go with the first section here, and we're going to go over a bunch of people who were very, very important and will be important as we move on to the next chapter as well. But for our pre-World War II, which leads up into World War II, these will be very, very important people and things like that. Joseph Stalin, who did change his name. Stalin means man of steel, and he had a very, very, I guess, difficult course to eventually lead up to becoming the leader of the Soviet Union for quite some time before World War II and up until through World War II and even several years after that. He was definitely noted for his brutality, his paranoia. Estimates, and again, these are, you can't really say they're exactly right. So the estimates are kind of, wide in terms of how many people that he's responsible for killing, but most are somewhere between, let's say, 30 to 40 million. And of course, that's over many, many years, but obviously, this is a horrible, horrible thing. There's a video that you're going to be watching part of about the similarities of Hitler and Stalin, which are actually pretty shocking. Totalitarian or totalitarianism. This is a government that has complete control over its citizens and puts down all opposition. Your only choice is to do what the government says, otherwise, you disappear. In some cases, your family disappears, and your life is filled with misery and painful death. Do not disagree with anything a totalitarian government says, or there will be consequences. And of course, well, Stalin claimed to be communist. He was really just a totalitarian ruler. Fascism. You've probably heard this quite a bit. People use this very commonly to accuse other people of not thinking for themselves. But what fascism actually is, it's a political system, and it's based on a strong, centralized government, and it's headed by a dictator. And of course, it emphasizes loyalty to the government over anything else. So if you're doing something that can be perceived as not in the government's interest, then you could be labeled as a traitor. If you don't praise the leadership and swear allegiance to the government, then you could be labeled a traitor. And what we'll see is that Mussolini, the leader of Italy, is the person that will be labeled a fascist. And there is Benito Mussolini, the leader of Italy, fascist dictator of Italy. And believe it or not, he actually taught Hitler a lot in terms of about speaking style and hand movements and appealing or playing to the crowd. And of course, Benito Mussolini met a pretty tragic end. It's kind of interesting if you look that up. Then, of course, we have the infamous Adolf Hitler, who, of course, was the Nazi dictator of Germany. Now, Nazism is a fascist type of government, a fascist political philosophy of Germany, and it's the Nazis' version of fascism. And believe it or not, Nazi stands, or the acronym in German, if you translate it, stands for National Socialism. And so Hitler's party, and believe it or not, he actually got elected, was the National Socialists. And so when you hear people making reference to National Socialism, sometimes there's this affiliation with Nazism, and that's one of the reasons people tend to be so averse to even hearing that term. Then, of course, we have the lesser known Francisco Franco, and he was the fascist dictator of Spain. And the reason why that's important is because there was a Spanish Civil War prior to World War II, and many people felt that that was going to be a sort of, I guess, prequel or foreshadowing of the greater war to come, because you had the communist forces fighting the nationalist forces of Spain, and it drew out for a very long time, but eventually Francisco Franco and the nationalists won. Finally, you have some American sort of feelings here. While this is going on, and remember, this is well before Pearl Harbor is attacked, so the United States don't really see themselves as having a dog in the fight, so to speak. And the American people, coming off World War I and Great Depression and everything like this, they're a little tired, and they just want to be left alone. And that's why neutrality acts were passed and laws passed by Congress to ban the sale of arms or loans money or weapons to nations at war. And supposedly this was going to keep us from being drawn in to the war that was going on. But obviously we know that didn't work so well. All right. Thank you so much.